I've been using the S24 Ultra now since it was released. I pre-ordered it and I was really looking forward to getting my hands on it. Heck, I even traded in my iPhone 15 Pro Max when I pre-ordered this thing on launch day. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. I've been an Apple user for the better part of my teenager to adult life, and in the past couple years, it's been pretty on and off. There's a part of me that really loves the iPhone, from the simplicity to how the device integrates with the entire ecosystem. There's really no denying that it's the better choice for most people. But I'm not most people. I like having a choice. I like trying out the latest and greatest, and most importantly, I love tech. I think that it would be pretty lame to call myself a tech enthusiast while simultaneously locking myself into a very close-ended ecosystem. And that's why I switched to Android. I think we get lost in this constant battle of what's better, which has the best benchmarks, and so on. And it's also really easy for me to lose touch as well, because it doesn't really matter what's in my pocket. I will eventually come around and use whatever device releases since I cover them on the channel, but I think I'm done with that. Being surrounded by choice is a good thing, don't get me wrong. Picking whichever device suits me based on my needs, and being able to try out some of the most unique flagship phones has been a really fun experience. But I think that Samsung has finally done it for me with the S24 Ultra. And while it's arguably an iterative upgrade, the S24 Ultra is hands down the best phone that I used, and it will remain in my pocket. Let me tell you why. This ecosystem thing, well, I do own a MacBook, but I've actually been working off of a Windows computer for a really long time now. The monitor is actually a Samsung G8 OLED, which has been my go-to for editing and gaming, and has been nothing short of perfect for my needs. And this TV behind me, okay, well, it's not as fancy as that monitor. It is a 4K Samsung display as well. Each one of these devices I'm able to control via the SmartThings app, whether I need to turn them on, change the channel, the volume, whatever it is. I have full control of these two displays in my office straight from my phone. And as someone who is extremely forgetful like myself, I tend to misplace my remotes quite frequently, so being able to have my phone on me at all times and use this thing to control all of these devices is amazing. And while I don't personally use them, Samsung does have Galaxy Buds, the Pros sound great, a Galaxy Watch, and even a line of Galaxy Books. But there's so much more, from displays to appliances, that I think people really forget how fleshed out the Samsung ecosystem really is. With features similar to universal control coming, as well as the fact that their tablets have DeX support, I may argue that Samsung's product lineup, while criminally underrated, could actually be much more powerful than Apple's very own ecosystem. However, when it comes to the phone itself, if there's something that I really love about the S24 Ultra, it's this display. Let me break this down quickly. Samsung will call this a dynamic AMOLED 2X display, and essentially what that means is that this 6.8-inch display on the S24 Ultra has a variable refresh rate of 1 to 120 Hz. The AMOLED just being a very efficient OLED, meaning that each pixel is self-illuminating, displaying perfect blacks with infinite contrast. However, what makes this display special is the 2600 nit peak brightness, meaning that outdoors, the S24 Ultra is theoretically 30% more visible or brighter when compared to the iPhone 15 Pro Max. However, and this is the first time I've seen this on a phone, with the use of Corning Gorilla Glass armor, Samsung has a very special anti-reflective layer over the display, cutting any glare significantly. I took off my screen protector and just wasted about $20 to show you exactly what I mean. This is the S24 Ultra, and there's a really bright light right in front of me. However, when I put over the screen protector, you could see how much more amplified this light becomes. This is pretty much what every phone on the market looks like, and this is what the S24 Ultra looks like in a bright environment. This is one of those keynote features that you think are going to be complete BS, but happen to be one of the most criminally underrated features of this phone. And to be honest, at 505 pixels per inch, I find it really hard to complain about anything when it comes to this display. It's vivid, large, and considering its rectangular aspect ratio, whatever you're watching or playing fills the screen and just allows you to be consumed. Seriously, until Apple can beat this beautiful display, I don't think that I'd ever go back to an iPhone anytime soon. One thing with the S24 Ultra that's been quite refreshing though is One UI 6.1. So I've spent about 45 days with this software and I have a lot to say about it. One thing that I've always loved about One UI is the ability to tweak quite literally anything, however you want, with a helping hand from the Good Luck app. But there are some things that I thought always should be available within the native settings, and now we're finally here. When changing your lock screen now, you have the ability to change the clock style, size, and color, and even add some special flair with the wallpaper effects. It does a pretty good job at doing things like turning your background into an oil painting, singling out the object, and it's something that I've been using a lot, especially with my engagement photos, because they just look really good. Of course, the nitty-gritty is going to always be within that Good Luck app, especially if you want themed icons from a package that you've downloaded off of the Play Store. But changes like this make One UI much more accessible and fun for everyone, and I'm honestly all for it. It's clear to me that Apple saw iOS 17's lock screen customization and said, hey, we can do it too, which is even more apparent by the similarly styled new always on display. But honestly, I'm a big fan of Samsung's implementation. But if there's one thing that I've always struggled with when it comes to Android and Samsung in general, it's gotta be social media apps. Not just in terms of performance when it comes to apps like Twitter, because those were a nightmare with jumpy timelines and terrible scrolling issues. Thankfully, that's not an issue anymore. But I'm talking about the actual upload of images to something like Instagram. Look, I think it's safe to say that I've avoided this platform like the absolute plague. But part of the reason for that was because of how many Android devices I was testing out. I found myself choosing to post less, whether it was stories or reels, simply because of how bad the quality and compression was. The in-app camera performance has got slightly better, which is something that I hope to improve as Samsung goes down this rabbit hole, but at least we can finally upload HDR photos and videos to platforms like Instagram and Snapchat now. It's a really good step in the right direction, which is made even more so apparent because of how good these cameras are on the S24 Ultra. I'll put it out there, the iPhone 15 Pro Max and Google's Pixel 8 Pro were hands down the best phones that I've ever tested when it came to camera performance. But I think Samsung takes the cake for video as of right now. Let me be really clear about something though. I'm not going to be comparing the S24 Ultra's video performance to something like the iPhone 15 Pro Max's ability to shoot in a log format. The S24 Ultra as of right now does not have the ability to shoot in log. It does suck, though while I enjoyed the ability to shoot log on the iPhone, I think I talked much more about how cool it was than actually having shot in it. The thing is, it's inconvenient. I'm not a professional filmmaker, I don't do heavy color grades or color space transformations, and most importantly, the file size is way too large for me to even consider being practical. So when it comes to the out-of-box auto video capabilities, Samsung wins in my book. Whether you're shooting in 8K 30, trying to get the sharpest, most vibrant image you can out of the sensor, or pushing this phone and shooting up to 120 frames per second in 4K for smooth, crispy B-roll, this thing can really do it all. I have been surprised by what I've seen come out of the S24 Ultra, especially in a well-lit environment or outdoors. The video looks beautiful. I've honestly been heavily considering switching to the S24 Ultra as my main vlogging camera for when I make content like day in the life videos on this channel, because of how much I can actually trust and rely on it to perform, and just how easy it is to shoot with. But the photos? With the 200 megapixel main sensor and its 50 megapixel periscopic 5x telephoto, the images that I've taken on the S24 Ultra have been stunning. Like I said in a previous video, a lot of people may disagree with Samsung's decision to switch from a native 10x telephoto lens to a 5x. However, I personally think that the bump in megapixels was worth cutting the range, simply because the 5x 111mm equivalent is much more common to shoot with. I find myself using the 5x telephoto in a ton of situations. There's solid background separation, the bokeh looks pretty good, and the composition you can get, especially with a human subject, is just super clean. But even considering that the 10x range is a digital crop on that 5x lens, because of the increase in megapixels, it almost looks indistinguishable from the S23 Ultra's native 10x telephoto camera. I have honestly really loved using the S24 Ultra as a camera, just going out, taking some nice point and shoot images. I know some people may not like Samsung's processing, and that's totally fine, but personally, I think this year they really did a good job with it. Okay, but it's not all about the display, customization, and cameras. the Galaxy S24 Ultra does have some pretty unique things going for it that other phones in the market just don't have. But before I tell you about them, let me explain some things that have helped me deal with the coping of not having iOS 17. Why I say it like that? I'm sure this one is a no-brainer, but when it comes to a FaceTime alternative, I pretty much just use WhatsApp. It's also especially useful for sending high-resolution images, since communicating with an iPhone, at least for now, will be done with SMS or MMS. Of course, if you're talking to someone who's also using Google Messages, which is the native communication app for Android, you'll have the luxury of using RCS, which is very similar to the way iMessage works. But as for right now, RCS is not a messaging standard. Here in North America, I don't have a single friend who uses an Android phone. Seriously. But people tend to use WhatsApp here, whether it's for work, school, overseas communication, so using it as an alternative really isn't as annoying as you might think it is. I haven't had to convince a single person to download it, which is really nice. And for the people that don't use it, honestly, I get around with using Facebook Messenger or messaging them on Discord or there's tons of other messaging applications. When I say that iMessage really isn't a big deal, I promise you, you'll get used to not having it. And of course, not having something like iCloud is still really weird to me, but I have managed to switch to using some apps that are multi-platform that I can access on any device, like the computer that I have behind me, this laptop, my S24 Ultra, and even an iPhone when I do need to use it. I started using Notion for notes, which has been an absolute game changer for me because it's way more in depth and allows for so much more in terms of page formatting. I've moved all of my photos to Google Photos, which is accessible on iOS as well as Android, and it's also nice because I'm really easily able to pull up memories on my computer. And for mail apps, Spark was my go-to, but now I'm back to rocking Gmail since I do tend to use a lot more of the Google Suite, and it's also just been way more convenient because of how well it works cross-platform, meaning that I don't have to jump through hoops when I am using an iPhone for testing. However, there is so much more. And if you want to see a full-length video about this kind of thing, let me know in the comments below and get subscribed. In terms of the special features, I'm talking about things like the S Pen. Being able to jot a note without even having to unlock the phone has been a game changer, since when I do find myself needing to take down a phone number or an email, I'd prefer it to do quickly and easily. Something like Samsung DeX, although not entirely useful for me, even just having the ability to turn your phone into a desktop is insane. With full cursor and peripheral support, the possibilities with it are kind of endless. And moon photos? Okay, they're fake. They're all fake. We've been lied to. But seriously, just even being able to use a 100 times digital zoom, while it is a novelty, it still is pretty dope. And I wouldn't recommend zooming in all the way unless you want your photos to look like an oil painting, but to each their own. Though I've been really enjoying this development we've been seeing with AI in the last couple years. Things like circle to search, being able to take a call with text, and being able to generate wallpaper using AI. While I could go on about these things, having AI like this has been influencing my purchasing decision since we've seen Google go crazy with it in the Pixel 8 series. I cannot wait until features like Hold for Me come to One UI, or the call screening feature, because it makes what is and can be the most annoying part of using a phone, the actual phone calling experience, so much more accessible and easy for everyone. It can help prevent scams, vet who's on the other line, and so much more. And let's not forget to mention that Google Assistant is just way more ahead of what Siri wishes it could be. While I do love the S24 Ultra with its titanium build, its now flat display, and its overall beastliness of a phone, the things that I found myself enjoying may honestly be pretty mundane to you. For example, Android Auto has been a far more consistent experience than CarPlay ever has for me. I have no issues with connectivity, Google Assistant works great, and the layout is perfect. I'm also a really big fan of the 45-watt charging, and while this may not be the fastest phone here in North America, it's a sizable step ahead of the 15 Pro Max, and it does so while being much cooler to the touch when charging. I do not charge this phone at home. The 20 to 30 minutes I get in my car is enough to top this thing up for a day, and I think that really goes to show you how far Samsung's come with keeping up when it comes to that battery life and efficiency. And when it comes to call quality and cell reception, living in a basement apartment has always been difficult when it comes to using an iPhone and even some cheaper Android devices, but with the S24 Ultra, everything just works. I get pretty much full or near full bars, and when it comes to the actual quality of the calls that I'm taking, everything sounds fantastic. Alright, as you can probably really tell, I've been enjoying the S24 Ultra and what comes along with that Android experience. When it comes to being an all-rounder, I think that Samsung really hit it out of the park and have made a phone that I finally feel like is no compromise for me. Large display, blazing fast performance with that Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 for Galaxy, fast and large storage options, tons of RAM to throw demanding tasks at it, and most importantly, features and tools that allow you to have fun. Whether it would be customizing your device, writing notes, or sketching, the S24 Ultra has everything that I want out of a flagship phone. In hindsight, while I was honestly really nervous about trading in my brand new 15 Pro Max to get this thing, I'm really happy with the decision that I made. I feel like if I had the 15 Pro Max laying around, it would just be taunting me to put my SIM card in it every single day, and I probably wouldn't have given this phone as fair of a shot as I did. And because of that, it's not leaving my pocket. Anyways, I hope you found this video useful. If you did, I would really appreciate a like and a sub to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.